Okay, this is the demo for a game called Scout's Honor. It's a prototype game developed by Kairos Game Lab, and this is the how to play. So the object of this game is a group of scouts are competing against each other to collect the most medallions and thus win honor for them and be second in command to the king of the kingdom. So there's a series of challenges, there's some races, there's some collecting, some mining. There's several different ways to collect medallions, and so the first one to a set score. This is a 3-player game, so for a 3-player game the score is 18 medallions. First one to 18 medallions wins the game. So the game board in Scout's Honor is really unique. It's made up of a series of randomly placed 9 square tiles, and these 9 square tiles, because of how they're placed every time randomly, creates a very unique game board, and then because of the rules, a very unique game playing experience. Two maps are never even remotely the same, so it makes for a lot of fun and a lot of replayability. So moving around the game grid is very simple. The board is divided into these grids, and on the grids are different terrains. There's desert, forest, plains, and mountains. They're represented by different colors. And there's no counting. The rules are simple. You just simply move to the next available terrain. So if I'm here on a mountain and I want to go this way to another mountain, I just move to the next mountain. Or I could move here to the next mountain. If I want to move to plains from here, I move to there. It's very simple. It's just the next one in a straight line. No diagonals, nothing like that. So it's very, very simple as far as how you actually move around the board. Now what's unique about the board is, as you can see here, there's a large desert terrain. There's another large desert terrain here where everything is connected. So one of the unique rules about this is, let's say I move here on this turn to that desert. On my next turn, I can leave anywhere from within this terrain to my next move. So I could move over here and move all the way to the next desert, which would be there. Or I could come up here and move all the way to the next desert, which is there. But you don't have to leave from the terrain that you're on. So I could leave from here to the next mountain, and I could go over to here. Okay, so moving is very simple, but that's how these different terrain squares create a really unique game environment every time that it's played. So the way that you score, like I said, is collect medallions. You can be the first player. This is the race element of the game. You can be the first player to one of these exits. And so there's medallion points here, 4, 3, and 2. They decrease, so the first one out gets the most points. And you can only have one player exit each exit, so you can't just stack up players in one exit and collect points. That's one way to gain medallions. The other way is on this, there are 2 diamond treasures here. So those are one time only. The first player gets there. It's another race element. Those are worth 3 medallions. And then the other way is to collect artifacts throughout the game. And the artifacts are here represented by these cards with the mine symbols on them. And so the way that these are collected is when you're on a square that has a mine symbol on it, you get to collect artifacts. Now artifacts, there's 6 different artifacts, I believe. Represented here, there's an arrow, a cup, a knife, a scroll, an idol, and a bowl. And then there's also a couple of random gold artifact cards. Gold artifact cards are instantly points, but they do have a little bonus. So on your player board, tells you the different combinations. So as you collect artifact cards, let's say you have 4 different artifacts. We can turn that in for 2 medallions. If you have 4 matching artifacts, so 4 bowls, you can turn that in for 4 medallions, 3 pair, etc., etc. What gold does is you can turn gold in immediately for 1 point, or you can hang on to it and turn it in with any other set collection of artifacts, and it becomes worth 2 points. But there's a danger in hanging on to artifact cards, and I will explain that in a little bit. So those are the ways that we collect points. You exit here and collect medallions here. You can collect medallions from these artifact cards, or there's the special diamonds down here that you can collect medallions from. So the game is going to be a series of movements. So you have 4 scouts moving those all around, hitting mines, racing to exits, making those decisions as to where you want to go in order to collect medallions. Now, as you can notice on the game board, there's these areas that are black, represented by the skull and crossbones. Those are hazard areas, and so those areas cannot be passed through directly. You just can't go in a straight line through them. You have to go around them, or there's a way to get through them, which I'll explain in just a second. All players start from the middle of the board and work out. You don't necessarily need to stack everybody up here at the beginning of the game. That's just where you leave from in any one of the directions. So as you're moving through the game board, let's say red. So I'm going to put the black player here on a plane, and let's say red also gets a plane, and he's beginning. So he wants to go this way too, but this is here. You do get to jump over the player, but it's like that terrain doesn't exist when it's occupied by another player. So he would get a free skip over that, and he could go here to this plane. All right, so you can never land on the same square, but what it does allow you to do is move even farther. So if you want to think strategically, sometimes you can put yourself, another one of your scouts, in a particular position in order to grant you a larger move. Okay, so that's the game board. Now let's look at how we decide how we get to move and where we get to move. Here are the cards that each player will have. I'll start over here. Each player will start with 3 scout cards. They represent the number of scouts you can move on any given turn. There's 1 card representing each terrain that's on the game board. Let's talk about those first. So on a player's turn, what you would do is you would decide, I call this the slot machine over here. You decide in the slot machine how many scouts you'd like to move, and then to what terrains you'd like to move them. So I'm going to say I want to move 3 scouts, and I would like to move to the desert and to the plains. Okay. Now how we decide where you get to move are these cards right here. So these cards have a whole random variety of these terrains on them. So this card right here, we'll turn this over. Let's say that's the card we're playing. Has plains and mountains. So I didn't match the desert, so I don't get that, but I did match the plains. So that means I could make 3 scout moves to any plains terrain on here, any legal move. So if I want to start a new one, I could come out here to that plain. So that's once. I can only move each scout once per turn. So that's my 1 move. Let's say I want to move this one here. That's my next move. And for my 3rd move, I want to bring this one up here. All right. So that's my 3 moves. I made 3 scout moves to plains only. If I had matched this, or let's say I did play mountains, then those 3 scout moves can go to either plains or mountains for each one of them. All right. So that's how you decide. Kind of, you gamble, you wager on where you'd like to move, and then if the cards match, the terrains match when they come up, then you get to move there. Some of them have multiple terrains. Some of them, as you might imagine, only have 1 terrain or maybe 2 on them, and so that's a little bit of the wagering aspect of the game. That's kind of why I call it a slot machine, kind of seeing what the luck is gonna give you. So the remaining cards are here. I told you I'd explain to you a couple things. So one of the cards you can play on your player board is called a local guide. And so instead of here, you only get 5 slots per turn. So instead of here, you could say, I'm going to play a local guide. And so what a local guide allows you to do is move through these hazard areas in a straight line. But there's a catch, is this only works when the card that's turned over for that turn has the word action on it. So that kind of enables any special cards to take place. So if this was true, so let's go here. If this is my hand and this is the card that's turned over, it has action, so my local guide would work, but it has forest. And I didn't match forest, so I wouldn't get to move. I'll explain to you what happens if you don't get to move here in a second. Let's say I did match forest. I could then, and one of my guys is sitting right here, and I want to use my local guide. The action enables it so I could move through this to the other side of that lake and get closer to that exit and those medallions. So that's one of the cards. Now when you use a local guide, it's done. You only get to use them twice. We just turn them over. You only get to use them twice per game. If you decide not to use them or you don't match, you don't lose them. You only lose them when you use them. The same is true about these. These are attack cards. So this one is an earthquake. Same, it requires the action to make it happen. But when you play this card, let's say this action does come up at the beginning of your turn, then when you get to play, you get to decide, and so that's what these cubes are. I would say, I'm going to move red. Let's pretend, just for kicks, red's over there. They're close to an exit. So I'm going to earthquake red. We use these cubes because each player can only be used or attacked once per turn. So if I take them, then it's not available for anybody else who's behind me in the turn order who may have also attacked. So the earthquake allows me to make one legal move in any direction, including through a hazard area. So I could take this red person back through here all the way to the next planes right there. So there's a little way to get at your neighbor. If maybe it looks like they're going to win the game, there's some ways to attack. So they encounter an earthquake. Earthquakes don't care about hazard areas, and it sets them back. So that's one attack. The other attack is simple. It's called a sneak attack, and you play it the same way. It requires action, and you take a cube again and mark who you're going to sneak attack when you make that attack. And what that enables you to do is take an artifact card at random, without looking, from your opponent. So that's where I said, remember, it might be dangerous to hold on to a gold card, which is worth an instant point. But if you want to hold on to it and get that bonus point, well, you risk somebody attacking you and taking your artifact card from you. So each player has 2 sneak attack cards, and just like the local guide, in fact, any of these specialty cards, once you use them, they're done, and so you get 2 sneak attacks per game, 2 local guides, and 1 earthquake. So that's how we move around the board. That's how the board is laid out. That's how you score. A couple of last-minute details about how the game works. Let's say the black team here has gone out here and they've collected this medallion, and they've exited here somehow, and they collect this medallion, so they've got those points. But what happens is, as soon as you get 2 players out of the board, they're done. They can't re-enter the game. As soon as that happens, you're required to take this X and lay it on top of one of your scouts. So now you only have 4 areas left on your slot machine. So you're going to want to think there's a little bit of the strategy and the decision point there on, do I go get those points and then my guys are now out of the board, or do I wait and let other players get them? How do I play that? All right, so there's some of the strategy for that. The last thing is, not the last thing, another thing is, how do we mine? So you see there's these mine symbols all over the board, and they're on different terrains. They're equally dispersed on the terrains throughout the board, but again, it's random, and so these may actually be covering a mine, so there's a bit of randomness to that. But the rule is this: when this card comes up on this turn, and every player plays every turn, so it's not like I make mine and we turn over a new card. This is a common card for everybody. We all play the same card. So when this mine symbol comes up, any player who's either on a mine already or can make a legal move to a mine square gets to mine. So you take an artifact card, and you get to keep that, collect that, and this is how these artifact cards are collected, so you can turn them in. Now once you have collected, we lay the little meeples over just to indicate that they've already collected there, because you can't stay and collect at one mine site over and over and over. You just can't. So as soon, maybe on your next turn you move, we'll stand this guy back up and move him the next legal move. So we'll take him to a terrain square there. All right. So that's how you mine. That's how you collect those artifact cards. One of the interesting elements of the game, if you look for them and find them on the board, there are some free moves that are available to you. So let me show you how a free move would work. We use this big desert terrain here in front of me as kind of an example. So let's say I'm over here on the forest, and on my turn I match desert with my slot machine, and so I'm going to move to the desert. And you always stop on the first square of a terrain that may be connected, and that's your move. You stop right there. Now on my next move, let's pretend I don't match desert. Well, I don't have to, because I'm already on desert. What I can do is instead use one of my scout moves to just free slide across that terrain up to a mine space. Okay? Now you can only free slide to a mine space or to an exit. So for example, over here, there's a desert terrain that's all the way connected. So if you land here, you can, on your next turn, free slide to the exit and out. You can only free slide to exits and mine spaces. You can't, say you're here again on this desert, you can't just free slide to here. That's a wasted move. Because on your turn, remember I said, from any connected terrain like that, you get to slide and leave from there. So that's, in essence, like you're not moving. It's a wasted move. So you can only free slide to mines or exits. So what happens if you can't move? What happens if you, let's say you just don't match anything on here, like this particular card comes up, plains and desert. Well, I wished for, voted for, wagered on mountains and forest. I didn't get anything. So I get to take a resupply card. And these are represented here. Resupply cards have several things on them. Let me show you what they have. Most of them are trading post cards. And what you do is you collect these, and if you collect 3 resupply cards, you can turn them in for either an artifact card or an additional legal move. So let's say you matched mountains on these cards and you moved here and you wanted to turn in your 3 resupply cards, you could then take another legal move to the next mountain square. That's the only time in the game that you can move the same scout more than once per turn, is if you have that ability. There are also some other cards, so that's collecting trading post cards. That's the most common card in there. There's a couple of Finders Keepers cards. That's just worth 1 medallion point, so there's some points in there. There's these cards, it's called a double up. And so there's one of these for each terrain. It says a scout may make an additional move to a desert terrain. So if you had this card, it's almost the same as turning in the 3, but it's a little more specific. So you would say you can make an additional move to a desert terrain, right? So let's say I'm here, it's the end of my turn, I play this card, but I have to have matched desert on here. For this card, it says match required. Okay, so I can only move here if that's a legal move for me on my turn, if I matched desert on my slot machine. That's the double up. The secret pathway is this says I can move 1 scout to any desert or the next desert terrain, but I don't have to have it matched here. So it's like kind of a free bonus move. Now, whether you turn in trading post cards, medallion points, secret pathway, double up, whatever it is, you can only turn in or use 1 resupply move per turn. So you couldn't turn in, collect an artifact card, then play this one all in a row. You get 1 resupply move per turn. But that's what those are for in the game. So you get them if you can't move at all, or, let's take this out. Let's pretend I don't have guys. I don't have 2 guys exited the board already, and this is my wager over here. I've wagered 3 scouts. Let's just go ahead and make it match the card that's up for you. So if this card comes up, I matched plains and desert. I have scouts, I have 3 scout moves, right? So I can move to either plains or desert. So I decide I want to move this one over to this desert, and this one, I'm going to slide it and then move it down to this plain. And then the 3rd scout, I just don't want to move that. I can choose not to, or I don't like my moves, whatever. And so I collect a resupply card for not moving that scout as well. So there can be some strategy in there as far as how many scouts you play. But remember, the more scouts you play, the lower your odds are of matching what's here. Because obviously, I mean, this would actually be, right here, would be a legal play. So you're going to match something, but you're just only going to get to move 1 scout. So how you wager affects the odds of matching what's on the card. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to play 1 turn, just so you can see, because once you see 1 turn happen, you see how the game works. And it's just a series of turns around the game until, like we said, somebody gets the required amount of medallions needed. In this case, again, 18 for a 3-player game. So we're going to say that I'm awarded first move. Right here, the black team is awarded first move. This card gets passed at the end of each round. So for this turn, I'm going to be the first move. Now, I have no idea what the next card is, so we're just going to play it. I'm going to play these 3 players like if the card was turned over in the real game. So here we go. All right, so we get action, a mine, and just the planes. All right, so I like to just do this. I didn't match these, so I like to pull those off the board just to help me remember what I have available to me. So I have 2 scout moves, 2 planes. And I like this move over here to this plane space. And I really like this to there because it puts me on a mine square immediately. So those are my two moves. My turn's done. Now it goes over here to blue. Blue matched planes as well and has 2 scout moves. So blue decides that he wants to go over here to this plane. And so let me just show you an interesting thing. This is what often happens in this game. Because I'm on this plane, look at the next planes, which is a blue square. There actually isn't one. Now, if there was one right here, and you played a local guide to get you through this, because there was action on the card, you could move from the beginning all the way to that square, again, if it was a plane square. So those are the kind of moves you want to look for on the board. Inevitably, they happen where there are these giant long runs that if you see them, you can take advantage of them. So this one, he's actually going to go here. So remember, I said that if there's a person there, it's like that train doesn't exist. So he's going to skip over and go to that planes right there. So he's going to be up by me. Then we go over here to this player. This player didn't match planes, and so he gets a resupply card. And that's it. First move gets passed over here, and we set it up and go again.